And so we need to have
so we can make sure he has his NRA member sticker on his bumper.
In democracy in the
what
form
the actual
of
NRA has been spending your uncle's actual money on
from putting in place these laws
like
prevents folks
Italian
like Senator
silk
Cruz.
Suits. Literally $275,000 worth of amazing Italian suits for one NRA executive. One NRA executive. He had the NRA pay for these after he personally selected them at a Beverly Hills boutique. It's one thing to read in the newspaper about that kind of thing allegedly happening at the NRA. It's another thing in this trial to have it all confirmed and to get to hear that NRA executive, Wayne LaPierre, try to make it sound okay, that this is what NRA dues-paying members were actually, in the end, paying for.
Now, Mr. LaPierre, you're familiar with a store in Beverly Hills, California, called Xena?
I am.
And you'll see here on Exhibit 339, did you ever receive Exhibit 339 before today?
Yes, I have seen this.
And do you know under what circumstances? The letter represents that it involves clothing purchases by Ackerman McQueen on your behalf. And in the letter, Mr. Winkler says, we need to address your wardrobe. You required us to provide specifically purchases at the Xena store in Beverly Hills.
Room constructed.
I do.
So due to the substantial nature of the total, we should address these items immediately, and it's listed at a dollar number $274,695.03. Do you see that?
I do see that.
And you'll see attached is a list of purchases by date and amount. You see that on the back?
I do see that.
And did you receive from the Xena store clothing in the value of $274,695.03 paid for by Ackerman McQueen?
I never saw the receipts.
And you did not pay for the suits, correct?
Correct.
So the suits were a gift, correct?
No.
Okay.
They were work wardrobes.
There were work wardrobe. $274,695.03 that Wayne LaPierre required us to provide specifically in purchases from this one store in Beverly Hills, California. $274,695 worth of suits, all bought for Wayne LaPierre from the NRA, but it was for work. It was either that or, those uniform jumpsuits with the name on the patch. We decided that $275,000 worth of Italian silk suits would be a better use of NRA dues-paying members' money. So that's what Wayne got for himself. And that was just one piece of it. My work wardrobe. Doesn't everybody get a work wardrobe like that? $275,000 worth of Italian suits. There was also Wayne and his family using NRA members' dues to pay for repeated family private jet trips to and from various family homes and the Bahamas. Also, his conflicts of interest, which also always seem to result in a little something nice for Wayne, like the guy whose firm Wayne LaPierre signed off on receiving contracts worth millions of dollars in payments from the NRA after that same guy repeatedly let Wayne stay on his 108-foot yacht, which included a full crew, including a chef, also some jet skis, and an extra smaller boat that rode along on top of the giant yacht. Thanks, NRA dues-paying members. Wayne made sure that your money went to that guy. That guy let Wayne use his yacht with the crew and the chef. When all this started to get exposed, when the NRA got caught for this stuff, in this corruption and self-dealing scandal, Wayne, that same executive, the guy with the suits and the private jet trips for his family and the yacht vacation bribes and all the rest of it, he came up with what he was sure was an escape hatch. He thought that he had come up with a get-out-of-jail-free card for the NRA. He thought he had come up with a magic trick that would prevent the NRA from getting shut down by the Attorney General of New York State. At least he thought that is what he had discovered. what he tried is he tried to declare bankruptcy, to basically dissolve the NRA on their own terms in New York, and then they would reincorporate themselves across the country in Texas, where I guess Wayne thought, state law wouldn't be used against him, no matter how many more suits he bought with NRA members' dues. Well, today, this federal judge in bankruptcy court in Texas ruled that that escape hatch doesn't work for this. There is no such escape hatch for the NRA. Avoiding getting in trouble for running your supposed charity like you were auditioning for the live Wikipedia theater version of the word embezzlement, that's not what bankruptcy court is for. And so you can't use declaring bankruptcy that way. You can't use it for a shield against the kind of litigation that New York State is bringing to bear against NRA, which they are going to use to shut the NRA down. Here's Judge Hale again today. Quote, based on the statements of counsel and the evidence of record, the court finds that the primary purpose of this bankruptcy filing was to avoid potential dissolution of the NRA in the New York Attorney General's case. The court is not in any way saying it believes the New York Attorney General can or cannot make the required showing to obtain dissolution of the NRA. But this court is saying that the bankruptcy code does not provide a sanctuary from this kind of threat. He says, quote, this is not an appropriate use of bankruptcy. It concludes this constitutes cause for dismissal. So the NRA's effort to declare themselves bankrupt and thereby escape what is waiting for them in New York State has failed. The NRA cannot declare itself bankrupt to avoid being potentially shut down by the Attorney General of New York. Escape hatch closed. The NRA had tried to declare bankruptcy to avoid that fate. Federal bankruptcy judge today blocked that, told them no, they can't do it. The president of Everytown for Gun Safety said in response, quote, today's disastrous decision for the NRA shows that they can't even file for bankruptcy correctly, which doesn't bode well for the many lawsuits and investigations they must now face. Shannon Watts, founder of Moms Demand Action, said this, quote, we showed the world the NRA could be taken on and beaten, not only by exposing them, but by notching victory after victory in state houses, school boards, city councils, and boardrooms. The NRA got its clock cleaned in court, but the gun safety movement is stronger than ever. Joining us now is Shannon Watts. After the Sandy Hook shooting, she founded Moms Demand Action to push for stronger gun safety laws. She's also been following this NRA trial very closely. Ms. Watts, it's nice to see you. We spoke sort of at the outset of this trial. I've been really looking forward to hearing your reaction to today's ruling.
I would offer the NRA my thoughts and prayers, but as a judge found out today, the only faith the NRA has is bad faith. And this filing for bankruptcy ended up just being a disaster and a colossal mistake for the NRA. It was a Hail Mary to avoid accountability. The court saw right through it. They properly dismissed it for lack of merit. And really, it's a victory not only for the accountability of the NRA, but for the rule of law.
The executives who are named in the New York lawsuit include Wayne LaPierre, who's been the public-facing head of the NRA for a very long time now. He's also ascribed much of the sort of egregious financial mismanagement that's alleged in the New York case against the group. If that New York case is successful, not only would the NRA be dissolved as an organization, but Mr. LaPierre would be, they'd be seeking millions of dollars in essentially restitution from him, and he'd be banned from ever holding this kind of a gig ever again in any sort of nonprofit. It does feel like the stakes are as high as they could possibly be for the people who've been running that corner of the pro-gun, anti-gun reform movement.
Absolutely. I mean, the NRA used to be a power broker. Now they're just broken. The road ahead of them has gotten so much harder. They have to go back to fighting all of these various litigations across the country against former donors, angry vendors. And they also have to face lawsuits from the New York Attorney General, the DC Attorney General. And this news really comes at the very worst time for the NRA because the discussion about background checks in the Senate is just heating up. And so it will be onerous, if not impossible, for the NRA really to effectively oppose gun safety and lobby lawmakers, which they always do, while fighting these court battles and their mounting debt.
Do you think that the background check legislation, has a path through the United States Senate?
Absolutely, I do. We are having very positive conversations with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. This is something 90% of Americans support, 89% of gun owners, only 1 in 10 even belongs to the NRA, 87% of Republicans. On top of that, this return to normal after COVID also means the return of horrific shooting tragedies across the country. It is time, after 25 years, for Congress to act. It's the right president, it's the right Congress, and we are going to make sure this gets done.
Shannon Watts, the founder of Moms Demand Action. Thanks for being here tonight. Now, this bankruptcy ruling means the New York case is going to go ahead. I imagine we'll be tracking that with you as well in days ahead. Thanks, Shannon.
Looking forward.
Cyber criminals burrowed into the computer networks for the operator of the Colonial Pipeline last week. They apparently stole a bunch of the company's information, demanded a ransom to give the data back. We don't know if the company paid the ransom, but the company did respond by shutting that entire 5,000-plus mile pipeline down on Friday to try to, they said, prevent any further breach of operations. This is a pipeline that distributes gasoline and diesel fuel and oil to heat up people's homes, also a significant amount of jet fuel, which means the implications of this pipeline being down for days are pretty staggering. I mean, without fuel running through the Colonial Pipeline, gas stations in parts of the East Coast are running out of gasoline, particularly in the Southeast. Gas stations in Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Florida, and Virginia. Some gas stations in all of those states had empty tanks today. 4 states have all declared states of emergency, Georgia, Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida, to try to deal with fuel shortages. American Airlines announced today that all direct flights from Charlotte, North Carolina to Hawaii and from Charlotte to London, those flights will now have to make a stop along the way to refuel.
Terrible at jealousy because what you just did.
America has never seen before. A former president who provoked a violent attack on this Capitol in an effort to steal the election has resumed his aggressive effort to convince Americans that the election was stolen from him. He risks inciting further violence. Millions of Americans have been misled by the former president. They have heard only his words, but not the truth, as he continues to undermine our democratic process, sowing seeds of doubt about whether democracy really works at all.
Democrats in Congress are trying to legislate a guarantee that democracy really works. They're doing that with a bill that they call the For the People Act. Each bill introduced in the Senate gets a number, and the majority leader gets to decide that number. Majority Leader decides who gets the most important number, which is number 1. Chuck Schumer gave the For the People Act the designation of number 1, Senate Bill number 1, S1. Today, the Senate Rules Committee considered amendments to S1 and voted on the bill. It was a 9-9 party line tie. In the Senate, it takes a majority vote to send a bill from the committee to the Senate floor. But Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has the power to bring S1 to the Senate floor, even after only a tie vote in the Rules Committee today. On the day, this day, that the Senate Rules Committee voted on nothing less than the future of democracy in America, Republicans in Arizona became the latest state to pass legislation that will make it more difficult to cast a vote in elections in that state. Arizona's Republican Governor Doug Ducey signed the bill into law this afternoon immediately after it was passed by Arizona's Republican-controlled Senate. Both of Arizona's Democratic senators, Mark Kelly and Kyrsten Sinema, have signed on as co-sponsors of S1, the For the People Act, which would prohibit the kind of voter restrictions signed into law in Arizona today. The sponsor of S1, Senator Jeff Merkley, is a member of the Rules Committee today, that it is now the Democrats in the Senate who are trying to rewrite election laws to their advantage, not Republicans in state legislatures.
But we all learned early in life, if you can write the rules, you can win the game. If you can write the rules, you can win the game.
Chuck Schumer pleaded with Republican members of the Rules Committee, including Mitch McConnell, to do something they never do. Consider the eyes of history.
In democracy, when you lose an election, you try to persuade more voters to vote for you. You don't try to ban the other side from voting. That's what Orban does. That's what Erdogan does. That's what dictators do. So what are my Republican colleagues in the Senate going to do?
Room constructed.
These laws carry the stench of oppression, the smell of bigotry. Are you going to stamp it out, or are you going to allow it to be spread? I plead